Hi, my name is Evelyn. I'm 27 years old, and for the past 5 years, I've been wearing a cheap apron, working double shifts in a noisy diner where no one even bothers to learn your name. I was just, hey, waitress to most. But deep down, I wasn't just a waitress. I had a dream to become a pastry chef. I didn't want to be rich or famous. I just wanted to create something beautiful in a world that had never been kind to me. People laughed when I told them. My ex said baking was a cute hobby. My manager once threw my homemade dessert in the trash and told me to stick to refilling coffee, but I never stopped practicing. At night, when the diner closed and the world finally went quiet, I'd go home, pull out my tiny oven and experiment with flour, sugar and hope. And then one night, one chocolate tart changed everything. That was the night I served dessert to a billionaire, and everything I thought I knew about my life flipped upside down. Do you want to hear what happened next? Buckle up. Because this is the story of how I went from being the invisible waitress to the personal pastry chef of a man worth $350 million. Every day at Manny's 24-hour grill started the same. Sticky floors, greasy counters, the clanging of dishes, and the smell of burnt bacon that somehow never left your clothes. I worked the morning shift, the worst one. That meant rude businessmen in a rush, grumpy regulars who never tipped, and teenagers still drunk from the night before. I wore the same faded pink uniform every day, the one with a name tag that had long since lost its print. But I didn't care. I wasn't there to impress anyone. I was there to survive. My manager, Laurie, had one eyebrow constantly raised and the patience of a wet matchstick. Every morning she'd bark out the same orders. Table 4's been waiting 10 minutes, Evelyn. Move it! We're out of the special. Again, stop offering it. If you keep spacing out, I'll find someone who doesn't. But in my head, I was never in the diner. I was in a bright white kitchen with copper pots hanging from the ceiling, and the smell of vanilla and melted chocolate in the air. That's where my real self lived. I'd been baking since I was a kid. My grandma taught me, rest her soul. She always said baking was about love and patience, neither of which existed at Manny's. Still, I kept a small notebook in my apron pocket. During slow hours, I'd sneak behind the counter and scribble new ideas for tarts, mousses, croissants. I couldn't afford culinary school, but I watched every video I could find, studied old pastry books from the library, and tested everything in my tiny apartment oven after work. Nobody knew this side of me. Not the customers, not Laurie, not even my co-workers. They only saw the tired girl with worn-out shoes and a forced smile. But one rainy Thursday morning, a man walked into the diner who would change everything. He didn't look rich. He wore a simple black coat, jeans and a grey beanie, but something about him was different. He had that kind of calm you only see in people who never have to rush. He sat at table 9, ordered coffee, black, and stared out the window like he had nowhere else to be. When I asked if he wanted anything to eat, he hesitated, then asked, "Do you have anything sweet, something homemade?" I froze. No one had ever asked that here. "No, sir," I said automatically. Then I remembered. I had made a batch of my new caramel chocolate tart last night. I had wrapped one slice and brought it in, planning to eat it during my break. It was still in the fridge. My heart pounded. Something told me to take the risk. "I actually brought something I made. It's not on the menu, but would you like to try it?" He raised an eyebrow. "Sure," he said with a small smile. And that was the moment it all began. I placed the slice of tart on one of our chipped white plates and dusted it gently with powdered sugar. My hands were shaking a little as I walked it over to table 9. It wasn't just a dessert. It was a piece of me, my late nights, my dreams, my everything. The man looked at the plate, then up at me. "You made this yourself?" I nodded, trying not to sound nervous. "Yes, last night. It's a caramel chocolate tart with a pinch of sea salt." He didn't say anything, just picked up his fork and took a bite. He closed his eyes. There was a pause. Then he took another bite, and another. No words, just slow, focused tasting. Meanwhile, my heart was doing somersaults. Finally, he looked at me and said, "This is exceptional." I felt heat rush to my cheeks. "Thank you. That means a lot. What's your name?" he asked. "Evelyn," I said. He offered his hand across the table. "I'm Daniel." Nice to meet you, Daniel. He glanced at the remaining bite on the plate, then back at me. Where did you train? I hesitated. I didn't. I've never had formal schooling. I just taught myself. He nodded slowly. Self-taught pastry chef working in a diner. That's rare. I shrugged, suddenly embarrassed. Bills don't pay themselves. Dreams are expensive. Daniel looked at me for a long moment, then pulled out a small card from his coat pocket. Come to this address tomorrow, 10 a.m. Bring more of whatever that was. I took the card and looked at it. There was no company name, just a name, Daniel Wolfe, and an address on Fifth Avenue. Are you hiring or something? I asked, skeptical. He smiled. Just come. I'll explain everything then. And with that, he stood up, left a $50 tip for a $3 coffee, and walked out of the diner. I stared at the card in my hand like it was made of gold. Daniel Wolfe. I didn't know who he really was, not yet. But I would soon learn that he wasn't just some guy with a taste for sweets. He was one of the wealthiest men in the city, a billionaire. And that day, I didn't just serve him dessert, I served him my future. The next morning, I stood in front of a polished glass building on Fifth Avenue, gripping a pastry box so tightly I thought I might crush the tarts inside. I wore the best outfit I had. Black slacks, a tucked-in cream blouse, and flats that had seen better days. My hair was tied neatly, my nerves disguised with makeup and a forced calm. The building's lobby looked like something out of a movie. Marble floors, golden elevator doors, a receptionist who didn't look up until I cleared my throat. I'm here to see Daniel Wolfe, I said. She raised an eyebrow, then checked her screen. Name? Evelyn. A pause, then she nodded. He's expecting you, 48th floor. As the elevator doors closed behind me, I could barely breathe. My heart thudded in my chest like a warning drum. What was I walking into? When the doors opened again, I stepped into a sunlit office space that felt more like a designer's dream than a workplace. Everything was white, gold, and glass. Art on the walls, views of the skyline, quiet efficiency. A woman in a sleek grey suit greeted me. You must be Evelyn. Come with me. She led me through a pair of double doors into a room with floor-to-ceiling windows. There, standing with his back to me, was Daniel. He turned when he heard us enter. This time, he wasn't just a man at a diner. He was commanding, polished, powerful. Glad you came, he said, walking over. What did you bring? Wordlessly, I handed him the box. He opened it, took one look, and smiled. This, he said, lifting out one tart, is art. I stood frozen, unsure of what came next. Then he nodded to the woman beside him. Sophie, clear my calendar for the next hour. She vanished without a word. He gestured for me to sit. I run several companies, Daniel said. One of them is opening a luxury boutique hotel chain. Each hotel will have a signature pastry experience. Unique, elegant, personal. I nodded slowly, trying to keep up. And I want you to be the one who leads it. I blinked. Leads it? As in, I want you to be my executive pastry chef, the face of the entire brand. My mouth fell open. But I'm just a waitress. You're not just anything, he cut in. You're exactly what this needs. Raw talent, authenticity, and the taste to stop time. It felt surreal, like a dream I'd wake up from any second. I'll train you, he said. You'll work under the best until you're ready, and when you are, the kitchens will be yours. I sat in stunned silence. One night of courage, one tart, one chance, and suddenly my life had changed. I wasn't just Evelyn the waitress anymore. I was Evelyn, the future head of $1 billion culinary vision. And I hadn't even taken off my coat. By the end of my first week, I had stepped into a world I didn't even know existed. Gone were the plastic gloves and greasy aprons of the diner. Now, I wore a custom-tailored white chef's jacket embroidered with my name. My name. Evelyn. Daniel didn't waste time. He flew me to Paris for a week of intense training under a renowned French pastry artist, Chef Marin. A woman with ice in her eyes and fire in her hands. Every second with her was brutal, meticulous, and unforgettable. You don't make desserts, she said, slapping my wrist when I overwhipped the cream. You sculpt experiences. I worked 18-hour days, burned myself twice, cried once, but I never broke. Not again. Back in New York, Daniel personally oversaw my integration into his company. He didn't just hand me the title. He made sure I earned it. Every kitchen meeting, every tasting panel, every brand meeting. I was there, learning, leading, becoming. Some staff looked at me like I didn't belong, like I was just another pretty face given a golden pass. But that only fueled me more. I came in early, stayed late, presented new recipes weekly, and when Daniel invited his board to a private tasting, I prepared 7 pastries that told my story through flavour. Hardship, hope, bitterness, sweetness, fire. After the final bite, there was silence. Then came the applause. One of the board members, a cold-eyed man named Sterling, looked at Daniel and said, "She's not just good, she's exceptional." From that day, things changed. People started calling me Chef Evelyn. I had a business card, a driver, a kitchen staff of 10, and every night when I went home, exhausted and smiling, I remembered where I started, in that diner, with trembling hands and burned sugar. Daniel checked in often, not just as my boss, but as a mentor. He believed in me more than anyone ever had. And that belief was contagious. I started believing in myself. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving. I was rising, and they were all watching. Success has a strange scent, the kind that draws people who once looked down on you, hoping you've forgotten. But I hadn't. Not even close. It was a Thursday when the past walked back into my life, uninvited and still smug. The catering company Daniel's firm occasionally partnered with had a scheduling crisis. I stepped in, organising a last-minute dessert delivery for a luxury charity gala. It wasn't in my job description anymore, but I wanted to help. And that's when I saw them. Trina, Madison, Alyssa. 3 women who used to call me Cupcake Girl at the diner. The ones who once mocked my crooked teeth, my tired uniform, the smell of burnt caramel in my hair. Now they were guests. Champagne in one hand, a sneer in the other. At first, they didn't recognise me. I wore a sleek black chef's coat and carried myself with confidence they'd never seen. But when I stepped onto the small presentation stage to introduce my pastry collection for the gala, it hit them. Trina's wineglass froze mid-sip. Alyssa leaned into Madison, whispering something that made all 3 of them laugh. Nervously, I stood tall, my voice clear. Tonight's selection is called Resilience. Each piece reflects a moment. The rise, the fall, the grit. It's more than dessert. It's a journey. My journey. They watched, stunned, when the guests took the first bite and gasped. I saw it in their eyes. Recognition, regret. And then came the part they never expected. Daniel joined me on stage. He placed a hand on my shoulder and said into the mic, "This woman is the best pastry chef I've ever worked with. And I don't just say that as her employer, but as someone who's inspired by her resilience every day." Applause thundered through the ballroom. My former bullies stood silent in their glittering dresses, swallowed by the sound. I didn't need revenge. This was better. Success was louder than any insult they ever threw at me. The next morning, I returned to the kitchen before sunrise. My hands instinctively reached for butter, sugar, and dark chocolate, but my mind was elsewhere. The gala had been a triumph, yet it stirred something deeper in me. Not pride, not revenge, closure, but also responsibility. Daniel called me into his office later that afternoon. I assumed it was about a new event, maybe even an offer to expand my role. I was wrong. He slid a sleek black folder across the desk. "I want to invest in you, Evelyn. Not just your talent, your vision." I opened it. Inside was a proposal. A boutique dessert atelier under my name, my recipes, my team, my rules, backed entirely by his company, with full creative control left to me. I stared at the offer, speechless. "This isn't charity," he said gently. "You earned every bit of this. I just want the world to taste what I already know." 1,000 memories rushed in at once. Sleeping on the couch in my aunt's apartment, scrubbing grease off diner floors, crying in the pantry after being mocked by customers. And now, this. "You really believe in me?" I whispered. "I do," he said. "But more importantly, you finally believe in you." That night, I couldn't sleep. I stayed in the kitchen after hours, experimenting with a new dessert I'd never dared try before. It was delicate, temperamental, the kind that demanded patience and love, just like life. As the first batch cooled on the counter, I smiled to myself. This wasn't just the next chapter in my career. It was the beginning of a legacy. And the secret ingredient was never sugar. It was everything I'd survived. The grand opening of my patisserie wasn't just a business launch. It was a rebirth. The storefront was nestled between two designer boutiques in the heart of the city. It had warm amber lighting, glass counters that sparkled like jewelry cases, and the comforting aroma of vanilla, caramel, and toasted almonds wafting into the street. Above the door, in gold foil cursive, glistened the name, Evelyn's. The first morning, I arrived before sunrise. My team, hand-picked, kind-hearted, and fiercely talented, was already preparing. Each of them had a story like mine. Overlooked, underestimated, but burning with potential. We weren't just making pastries. We were crafting purpose. By 8 a.m, a line had already formed down the block. I stood behind the counter in my crisp white chef's coat, heart pounding, hands steady. The first customer was a woman in pearls. She raised an eyebrow at my simplest creation, a honey almond tart with lavender cream. "I'll try that," she said with cautious disdain. She took one bite. Her eyes widened, then softened, then closed. She didn't say a word, just nodded, bought 2 more, and left in stunned silence. The day was a whirlwind. We sold out before noon. Local food critics showed up unannounced. One of them described my chocolate cardamom eclairs as something you'd eat before ascending into heaven. Even Daniel stopped by. Not in a suit, but in jeans and a quiet smile. He didn't need to say anything. I could see in his eyes that he was proud. But the real moment came just before closing. I saw someone lingering outside, hesitating by the window. It was the manager from the steakhouse, the one who once said I wasn't elegant enough to work in fine dining. He didn't recognize me through the glass. I stepped outside. "Evelyn?" He blinked. "Yes," I said, arms folded, chef's coat pristine. "Can I help you?" He looked around nervously. "This place is incredible. I didn't realize it was yours." "I figured," I replied. "Most people don't recognize who they once ignored." He stammered. I just wanted to say congratulations." I smiled, not with bitterness, but with grace. "Thank you," I said. "Would you like a pastry?" He paused. "Actually, yes." I handed him a box. "This one has a little bite," I said. "Just like me." He laughed awkwardly, nodded, and left. As I turned back inside, I realized something. I didn't open this place to prove anyone wrong. I opened it to prove myself right. 2 weeks after the grand opening, the patisserie had become more than a dessert shop. It was a sensation. Influencers posted daily about our crème brûlée croissants and rosewater millefeuilles. Tourists added us to their must-visit lists. Locals treated it like a sacred ritual. But one morning, as I was finishing a batch of pistachio honey madeleines, a handwritten envelope arrived. No return address, just 2 words in bold script, for Evelyn. Inside was an invitation, elegant, heavy cardstock, embossed gold lettering. "You are cordially invited to prepare a private dessert tasting at the residence of Mr. Alistair Monroe. Chef's table. Friday, 7 p.m. I froze. Alistair Monroe, the elusive billionaire behind Monroe Global, worth over $350 million, and one of the most powerful men in the city. No one just got invited to his home. This was a once-in-a-lifetime honour, or a test. That Friday, I arrived with a curated box of creations, classic recipes with my own soulful twists. His estate was something out of a movie, marble columns, vintage art, quiet staff, but nothing prepared me for what happened next. He opened the door himself, tall, grey at the temples, commanding, but his eyes were warm. "You must be Evelyn," he said, offering his hand. "My daughter hasn't stopped talking about your lemon thyme tarts." I blinked. "Your daughter?" He laughed. "She goes to school with the mayor's niece. They came to your shop on opening day." We walked into a breathtaking dining room. A long oak table gleamed beneath a chandelier, but only 2 places were set. "Just you and me?" I asked. He nodded. "This isn't about food critics. I want to taste the soul behind the oven." No pressure, right? I plated 5 desserts, each one a piece of my story. After the first bite, he leaned back. After the second, he closed his eyes. And after the third, he said, "You don't just bake, you tell the truth through sugar." Then he stood up, walked over to a cabinet and pulled out a small velvet box. "I don't do this often," he said, "but every once in a generation, I meet someone who reminds me why I started." He opened the box. Inside was a solid gold whisk pin, the Monroe culinary crest. "I'd like you to be my private chef pâtissier," he said. "Full-time. Travel with me. Create for me. Teach my team. I'll invest in anything you ever want to build. You've earned it." I didn't know whether to cry, laugh, or pinch myself, but I knew one thing. The girl who once wiped crumbs off VIP tables was now being offered a seat at the top. I accepted Mr. Monroe's offer that very night. But what followed wasn't just a promotion, it was a transformation. I wasn't just whisking eggs and tempering chocolate anymore. I was crafting menus for state dinners, teaching masterclasses in Monaco, and curating experiences for the most powerful people in the world. His jet became my second home. Tokyo for matcha-inspired pastries. Vienna for saffron sugar lessons with old-world artisans. Back in New York, I oversaw the redesign of his private estate kitchen, a multi-million-dollar culinary laboratory built just for me. Mr. Monroe wasn't just a patron. He was a mentor. He taught me how to negotiate, how to lead, how to expand. Soon, I wasn't just his private chef. I was his culinary director, his partner, and eventually, his co-founder in a new venture, Monroe Maison Sucrée, a luxury dessert brand set to rival the world's greatest. We opened boutiques in Paris, Milan, and Seoul. And I, Evelyn, the former waitress they laughed at, was on the cover of Forbes under the headline, "The Billionaire's Baker, from back kitchen to boardroom." The very same people who once sneered at my apron now reposted my quotes. My recipes were studied in culinary schools, and offers poured in daily from investors, chefs, and media. But the part that meant the most? Hiring the girls who used to work double shifts just to survive, like I did, bringing them into my kitchens, letting them rise, because I knew how it felt to be overlooked, and I'd vowed never to become one of them. This wasn't just success, this was justice, sweet, layered, and served on a silver platter, and I wasn't done yet. A year later, I received an invitation. It was embossed in gold, written with the kind of flourish you'd expect from old money. The Monroe Foundation was hosting its annual gala, the same one where I'd once spilled champagne and been mocked by women in pearls and men in designer arrogance. But this time, I wouldn't be serving. I was the guest of honor. My name was printed at the top of the program. Evelyn Marsh, award-winning chef and co-founder of Maison Sucrée. I almost laughed when I saw it. I arrived in a custom white gown with silver embroidery, tailored to perfection. My hair in a sleek updo, my confidence unshakable. I stepped out of a black car, cameras flashing, a line of journalists calling my name. Inside, everything looked the same. The chandeliers, the music, the smell of expensive perfume. Except this time, the air shifted when I walked in. People stood. They whispered. They smiled, a little too eagerly. Among them, I spotted familiar faces. The same socialites who once rolled their eyes at me when I asked if they wanted still or sparkling. Now they clutched their clutch bags like lifelines, their smiles wide but fragile. One of them, Camille, the woman who'd once mocked my clumsy tray, stepped toward me. "Evelyn," she said, her voice light, "you look incredible. I've been following your success, truly inspiring." I nodded politely. "Thank you." Then she added, "Would love to collaborate sometime. I run a lifestyle brand now. Maybe we can feature your pastries." I looked her straight in the eye and smiled. A calm, measured smile. "Funny," I said. "Back then, you didn't think I was good enough to carry a tray. Now you want me to represent your brand?" She flushed. I didn't say it to be cruel, just honest, because karma doesn't need to scream. That night, I took the stage to receive an award for innovation in culinary arts. I gave a short speech. I started at the bottom of this very room. I was invisible to most of you, but someone saw me and gave me a chance. I'm here to tell you, never underestimate kindness, or the quiet one behind the tray. The applause was real, but more than that, it was earned. I still remember the clatter of plates, the heat of the kitchen, the sting of laughter behind my back. There were nights I cried into my pillow, wondering if I was chasing a fantasy, if being just a waitress was all I'd ever be. But here I am now, Evelyn Marsh, executive pastry chef, entrepreneur, and co-owner of one of the most exclusive culinary brands in the country. My creations are served at presidential galas, celebrity weddings, and five-star resorts around the world. My name, once forgotten on cheap order slips, is now etched into awards and written in articles. But that's not what matters most. What matters is that I never let humiliation define me. I let it fuel me. Mr. Blackwell, the billionaire who once gave me a chance when no one else did, is still a close friend and my mentor. We meet for coffee every month, and he still calls me kid, even when he's the one asking for my opinion now. Sometimes I go back to that old restaurant, not to relive the past, but to leave a tip so big it pays someone else's tuition. To smile at a waitress and say, "You're doing great, don't let them dim your light." Because if my story means anything, it's this. You don't need permission to rise, just the will to keep going. And one day, the world that mocked you might just stand and clap.